Hey everyone, Amy here. I have another video for you, and this time I want to talk to you on something that I call the University of Silence. I know that seems a little bit weird, but really truly when we go through those silent times in our life, and what I mean by silent times is when God seems to be silent, where we're crying out to Him, seeking Him, searching for Him. We're looking for answers. We need the answers. We need them like yesterday, and God seems to be silent. He seems to be nowhere to be found, so to speak. And I call it the University of Silence because God uses silence as a way to teach us something. Just like if you were to sign up for like a class at a university. You find the class that you need, and it's usually sectioned on one specific thing. And when you sign up for that course, you know you're going to have to study the material. You know there's going to have to be a time where you're going to have to really put a lot of effort into studying and learning about this. And then at the very end, there's a huge test. That test basically determines whether you are going to pass that class, get the credit, or not. But there's something that I think we fail to realize sometimes. When we take that big final test and we have spent the whole time preparing for it, the preparation leads us to that test inevitably. And when we come to that test, I think we fail to realize that, you know, the teacher is always silent during the test. There's times of preparation, and we are getting taught by that teacher. But then, the day of the test, the day of the exam, the teacher is silent. The teacher does not speak. You take the test out of everything that you learned during your season of preparation. And that's how it is with God. Jesus is the great rabbi, He is the teacher. And when we are going through a test, He is silent, and it happens. So, don't be surprised when you get yourself into a situation where you go through a season of preparation where He was preparing you and strengthening you, giving you those things that you were going through. You thought, why in the world am I going through this right now? Well, it was all coming up to the certain test that you were going to have to go through. And with God, there's good news and bad news to some things when it comes to a test. The good news is if you fail the test, God will make you retake it again. The bad news is for you, He'll have you keep retaking it until you finally pass it. So, during those seasons of silence, don't be discouraged. As a matter of fact, there's some key people in the Bible who went through the times of testing and silence. For instance, first person that I wrote down, Moses. Moses was in a spot where he first started off in a palace with the Egyptians, and God brought him out of that palace into the wilderness. And there was a season of silence that he went through until he came and encountered that all-consuming burning bush where he spoke to the Lord. The other person, Joseph, kind of like a reverse thing. Joseph was given a dream, and he didn't really have the integrity and character to keep him right where he was in that moment. And he bragged on that dream and went to his brothers and was like, guess what? You're going to bow down to me. I'm going to be king. And the brothers didn't like that, so they sold him into slavery. And then from there on out, it was just one string after just bad events happening nonstop to him. Good part of the story is during the seasons of silence where it seemed like God was not there and it seemed like his dream was not coming to fruition, Joseph stayed faithful to God, and he kept a really good attitude. And that season of silence, all that preparation led him to that season of silence where the testing was happening, and he passed. Another person, one of my favorites, obviously, is David. David was anointed king way before he was ever appointed king by man. He was anointed king by God way before he was appointed king by man. And I can't imagine how that must have felt. I don't know about you, but he was an afterthought because, his father had brought in all the sons for, I believe it was Samuel that was going to anoint. He was listening to God, having him tell him who the king was going to be. And he went through this whole line of men, and God was like, no, that's not him. That's not him. That's not him. And he looked to the father and he said, is there anybody else? And he's like, well, yeah, I have a son named David, but he's out taking care of the sheep. I mean, basically what he's saying is, you don't want David. There's nothing special about David. But you see, man has no say over who you are and how special they think you are, because if God thinks you're special and God sees you as appointed and anointed and ready to do all the things He's caused you and called you to do, then you better believe you will do it. So they bring David up, and God says yes. And it's one of the most famous scriptures that you hear a lot of people quoting. Basically, God said, listen, I don't really look at the outer appearance of man like you do, sir. I actually look at the heart, because the heart is where all the life flows out of. Whatever's in the heart is going to come out through your mouth, your actions. And God was pleased by David. So they anointed David, and then they basically said, all right, David, go back out to tend the sheep. Can you imagine David going back out to tend the sheep and thinking, I was just anointed king, and I'm doing the same thing I was doing before I was anointed king? But you see, that's how it is. It's all preparation. Everything that David went through was preparation. And as you know, he ended up being king, and from that seed, King Jesus later on. And Jesus is the last example I want to give you of somebody who waited. Jesus, I believe, knew who he was from the very beginning. And, Jesus didn't step into his full ministry until he was 30 years old. That's 30 years of preparation. I can't say it was silence altogether because he was fully God and fully man. But can you imagine that waiting during that time? Jesus was a carpenter. He worked with tools, wood, nails, everything. And I wonder how many times he was building a coffin for somebody to be buried and thought, God, is it time? He knew the power that was running through him and building these tables and coffins and whatever it is that he built. Can you imagine him building a coffin for somebody who just died and thinking, I have the power running through me right now to resurrect that person? But God, is it time? Or can you imagine every time he went to the synagogues and he heard people reading the scriptures, the holy scriptures in the Torah talking about, the coming of the Messiah, and he thought, is it time? They didn't know he was there, but he was there. And he probably thought all the time, is it time? Is it time? And he had to keep waiting and keep waiting. And he worked with the nails, and he worked with the wood. And how ironic, if you want to call it that he worked with nails and wood, which is the very thing that would crucify him, physically, materially speaking. And leave it to Jesus, leave it to the carpenter Jesus to take wood and nails and to climb up on that cross and build an entire kingdom. That is my carpenter. That is the kind of man that I love. That's my Jesus. But he shows, just patience, and I love that. So what I'm trying to say is this: if you find yourself in a season of silence where you're crying out to God and you're calling out for answers and it doesn't seem like he's listening to you, I want to tell you something. God can do more in your waiting and in your silence than you could do in all of your doing, in all of your strength in every season. God can do more while there seems to be nothing going on than you can do with your own two hands. So I want to give you 4 different things that I do when I feel like I'm going through that silent test. Number 1, have an attitude of praise. There is nothing more beautiful than having an attitude of praise, and you better believe God will not let a worshiper ever be defeated. Read the Bible. Every time there's some battles that were, before they were even won, the worshipers would go out and worship. And then the battle would be actually won just because of the worshiping, because exalting God means you magnify him above everything else. Number 2, write down your goals and focus on them. It says in Habakkuk 2:2, write the vision down. Make it plain. Whatever you have to do that during your seasons where you feel like things are being really silent and you can't hear God. For me, I take a dry erase marker, and on my mirror right here in my bedroom, I write down my goals and my plans so that when I look in the mirror in the morning, I don't feel like getting up and doing something that day. I have a reminder right there. The vision is stated. It's plain. I know what I'm working towards. I know what God has called me to do. It's good to remind yourself of that. Number 3, be diligent in prayer. It says in Matthew 7:7, ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, you'll find it. And knock, the door will be opened. That's a 3-fold promise to you. He has given you 3 ways to pray. And if you interlock those all together and use all of those in coming and petitioning things to God, just Mark my words, you will be in the center of a God appointed miracle when you ask, you seek, and you knock. Be diligent in prayer. You know, the violent take it by force. You know what you need in life, you know what you want in life. You go to God, and in the name of Jesus, you pray those things out. Last, number 4, be faithful where you are planted. It may not seem like you are where you're supposed to be. And 9 out of 10 times when God calls you to something, where you're at is going to contradict where He's called you to. You're in perfect company. You're in great hands. It's never going to look like what it is. And this is a scripture I want to share with you before I close right now. I have it right here in front of me. It's Isaiah 55, 8 through 11. And this is what it says. You're going to love this. I get really excited. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven, and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater. What he's saying there is, listen, I have a purpose for everything. It's coming from me. It's going to do good. It's going to cause fruition. Last, which is Isaiah 55:11. So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent. This is what God's saying right now. Listen, when I spoke you into existence, I knew exactly what I was doing. There's no mistake in what I've called you to do. Everything that I've called you to do, I've equipped you to do. Don't lose faith. Don't doubt. Just because you don't hear me, just because you don't see me manifesting in ways that your flesh wants to see doesn't mean that I'm not working. The Lord wants you to learn how to lean on Him in pure faith during times of silence. And when that appointed time comes, you will step right in at the threshold of your destiny. Every second that God has given you, the minute you clocked into your purpose, you are appointed for destiny and you will fulfill it because He said it in His word. Isaiah 55:11. If it came out of my mouth, so it shall be. So I want to encourage you with that today. I'm going to be praying for you, and I'll have another video for you very soon.